Схоже, що всі, чи майже всі.
It seems to me that everyone, or almost everyone, is here. So I think that we may start. Dear friends, dear colleagues, dear partners, dear ladies and gentlemen, we're happy to greet you here today at our public event named Social Cohesion and Resilience in Ukraine, State and Future Perspectives. I'm Ruslan Kermich, Senior Political Advisor for Partnership Fund for Resilient Ukraine, and I'm going to be moderator today. So before we get down to the main part of our event, I'd like to ask you to honor the fallen with a moment of silence.
Дуже дякую.
Thank you. So before we get down to the main part, I'd like to explain the technical details. So the agenda is available on the registration badges, and or you may have the handouts which are on the tables, available on the tables in this room next to the water. So where the language of today's event is Ukrainian, but we have English-speaking participants and simultaneous interpretation is available, so you're welcome to pick up a headset. So for those who are going to join us online, so we are going to have both the broadcast both in English and in Ukrainian, and the participants will be offered a Q&A session. We'll have two of those. That's where you can pose your questions, also after the panel discussion. So the participants that are going to join us online, so they can scan the QR code in the top corner of the broadcast to join us and to pose questions. So when during air raid alert, we can go to the second floor of this building, and my colleagues will show where to go. So going back to our main topic, so the Social Cohesion and Resilience in Ukraine study that we're going to present today was carried out to understand what shapes social cohesion and resilience in Ukraine. And this is about the trust to institutions, the relations and the trust between the citizens and the state, social ties, and other aspects that shape the ability of the society to adapt to the reality of the war. And we're going to discuss main things concerning resilience during the panel. What factors help strengthen resilience or what weakens it, and how the research findings can be used for shaping policies and support the programming for communities on different levels. That's what PFRU does, actually. So this research was done by Metrica, by Kiev International Institute of Society, and IPSIS, and it was commissioned by PFRU. So as we've mentioned, PFRU is a multi-donor initiative supported by the UK, Estonia, Canada, Norway, Switzerland, Sweden, and Canada. PFRU seeks to support Ukraine and to support its ties between the society and the state, or through support to private sector. And so, I have named all the donors and financing partners. So this was an important thing to do. So now the official part is over. So I would like to give an opportunity for our partners or financing partners to say a few words. Our program has been actively working since 2022, and we're focusing on territorial communities, on supporting communities, supporting their resilience, basic critical services, and in this work we have a stable important partner that is also focusing their activities on the local level, the Ministry for Regional Development of Territories and Communities. And we have an honored representative from the ministry who I'd like to give the floor now, Vitaly Prusenko, the head of the department for the regional development under the ministry. Dear colleagues, happy to greet you, and I'm happy to be here today because the topic of today is very important to shape the policies and the support of the state to the regions on a quality level. And when it comes to research, when we speak of resilience and cohesion, we think in the first place of 10 regions and 215 communities and the millions of peoples that live there. So, and the state showed during 2025-2026 that the policy is shaped with the needs of the residents in mind. And during 2025-2026, about 80 tools were introduced, from simplifying the utility to raising the wages of utility workers, and to really improve the well-being of the citizens. And so I remember the index, the level of the connectedness or the connectedness to the state. It was 40, now it's up to 80. 80 people say proudly that they are Ukrainians, and every corner of our state is unique. Frontline territories, they are our pivot. They protect the rest of the communities and the Eastern Europe against the aggressor. The Western regions, they help us economically wise and logistically wise. So the whole of Ukraine is providing the support to make it possible for Ukraine to flourish and to become an EU state. So how do we build on the data that we have, on the findings? Quite often, sociologists and different area experts say that policies are never data-driven. In fact, today what we have is we have over 100 strategies, programs, and they are all different as a thesis or a report. They are beautiful, but maybe a bit not aligned. But such research as this is a foundation for revealing the problems by regions to inform our policy so that they are quality and data driven. And we need to shape our policies with different regions and topography in mind, because there are agricultural communities, there are communities with different landscape, but with their needs in mind, we can be better strategists. Ukraine is faced with two challenges: so defy the aggressor and EU accession. And this is possible only through keeping our citizens' needs in mind. That's how we can really face the challenges through the coming years. And the Partnership Fund with the Resilient Ukraine have been a robust partner, and we have done a lot in terms of analytical work and in terms of supporting frontline territories and the citizens of those territories, in the first place frontline hromadas. And I think that this is a great work, and thank you. I hope that this research will present interesting findings that hopefully will surprise us also, and also the dynamics. Thank you, Vitaly, for these words. And it's important for us to know that our work informs the policies and the work of your ministry. And we hope that this fruitful cooperation will carry on. Now, I would like to give the floor to our financing partners, to those who has been supporting us financially and the program. I would like to give the floor to Mr. Andrew Okkanen, the UK Embassy.
A version of myself on the screen. So look, thank you very much indeed to the government of Ukraine and to PFRU for convening this session today. It's a very important session. But thank you also to all of you for making the time to come and engage with the results of this report. I never say anything publicly on Ukraine without mentioning two things. First is to recognize the courage, the resilience, and the sacrifice of the Ukrainian people. And second is to talk about the fact that the UK absolutely stands with Ukraine and is here for the long term. You won't be able to see it at the back, but this badge here is the 100-year partnership between Ukraine and the UK, and signifies the fact that we are here for the long term and we stand shoulder by shoulder with our Ukrainian friends and colleagues. As part of this, I think PFRU is a really important part of this, alongside our other financing partners, in strengthening the resilience and cohesion of Ukraine in these difficult times. And I think while we recognise the importance of resilience and cohesion, I think this study is really important because, as the previous speaker said, it recognises the importance in bringing together evidence and actually getting the best possible up-to-date picture of how Ukrainians experience resilience, trust, and cohesion, and in particular how this is evolving over time as we are in the 5th year of the conflict. The point that stands out from a kind of a reading of the report for me is that civic identity continues to hold, but trust matters, both in people, in between people, and with the institutions. And both of those levels of trust are under threat. I think where this study will be particularly helpful is helping us to identify where the tensions may emerge and responding effectively to those across different groups and across different regions. Because in the 5th year of the war, delivery depends not just on maintaining cohesion, but on bringing together all of these groups and preventing these tensions from spilling out. So the priority now, again, as the previous speaker says, sorry to repeat your words, but the important thing now is to make use of, so to listen to this study, to really understand this study, to take in the evidence and respond to the evidence in a way that will allow us to deal with these tensions and to use the resources that Ukraine has and the financing partners are providing to really deal with those, to keep those regions in the best possible place. We're really looking forward to continuing to work with PFRU and our government colleagues to make that a reality. And once again, huge thanks for coming today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew, of what will be presented soon. Я тепер хотів би запросити.
And now I would like to give the floor to the people who organized this event, basically who were directly involved in the launch of this research and in the implementation. I would like to give the floor to Duncan Hiscock, Deputy Team Lead, Partnership Fund for Resilient Ukraine.
Thank you very much and welcome everybody. Half of what I was going to say has of course already been said, which is kind of inevitable when you're the third speaker, but I just wanted to sort of focus on two things really. Why are we doing this survey, which I know others have already touched on, but also what is it for and how it will be used. And on the first point, others have already said this, but just to really emphasize, resilience is really at the heart of everything PFRU does. It's in our impact statement that we are supporting Ukraine to be resilient now and into the future. And particularly when you look at social cohesion, that is about looking both now and into the future. And under PFRU1, the first phase of PFRU, we worked on something called SHARP, the score-inspired holistic assessment of resilience of population. But when we were discussing with financing partners and particularly with some of the leading people within our partners, there was a question of, do we really understand as well as we need to what resilience and cohesion actually mean for Ukrainians right now? Are we at risk of perhaps assuming that we know what we mean by resilience, what we mean by cohesion, and designing our programs based on those assumptions? So we really pushed ourselves to go back to the start and actually find out what do Ukrainians think resilience mean? What do Ukrainians think cohesion means? And we undertook, and I'm sure others will talk about it in a minute, we undertook a lot of additional qualitative work to really sort of delve into that as well. And I think this has really helped us to get a sort of very detailed and very interesting survey. So that's why we did it. But who is it for? Well, firstly, I would say it's for us ourselves. It's really important as PFRU. It's a very big and very significant program. But as we said, we want to keep pushing ourselves to make sure we're doing the right things in the right way, in the right communities, recognizing the different needs and the different pressures that people are under. So the survey has been designed in such a way that it is really, hopefully, useful to a lot of our colleagues right across the programme, and we have some of our colleagues in the audience today. So in the coffee breaks and so on, please do talk to them and ask them how they intend to use this as well. Secondly, we hope it will be useful for others in Ukraine, and we're very grateful that Pan Protasenko could be here today. And as he has mentioned, we hope that it will be useful for really informing policy, for informing strategy, and that this is just one more piece of data that will help give a really good understanding of the different geographic needs, the different personal needs that people have right across the mosaic of Ukraine. And then last but not least, we hope that it will be useful internationally as well. As will be talked about in a second, there is also part of the study that compares social cohesion in Ukraine to social cohesion in other countries. And I think, I can say this as a Brit, social cohesion is not just a concern in Ukraine. It's a concern in every country in Europe, I think, at the moment. It's something that we all know. There are challenges to social cohesion. There are risks to social cohesion in every country. And I certainly, when I first saw the findings from this, I was really struck by the fact that, yes, there are challenges, there are pressures on social cohesion in Ukraine. But actually, Ukraine is incredibly coherent and incredibly cohesive after 4 years of war. And I think when you compare that to some of the similar data in other countries, I think it really does help, see just how strong Ukraine is. And I think that's perhaps a narrative that also is helpful to sort of share with colleagues in other countries who are, wondering how Ukraine is doing after 4 years of war. So I will end it there and say thank you very much and enjoy the presentation.
Thank you, Duncan. І нарешті
And finally, the last words, the last speech that I would like to hear today. I would like to give the floor to a person who contributed a lot to this research, to this survey, to this presentation. I would like to give the floor to Olena Selecka, Research Director, PFRU. Thank you, colleagues, and I'm happy to see you here at this presentation. And I will serve as a kind of bridge between what our partners and colleagues said and the findings of the research. Before I will give this floor to our colleagues, I would like to tell you in a nutshell the background of our research, of our national research. We started to conduct such surveys in 2022, in 2023, 2024. We conducted surveys. It was called SHARP, Score-Inspired Holistic Assessment of Resilience of Populations. And this survey was conducted together with our partners, SEED, with the support of our partners from UNDP, as well as two USAID projects supported us, and we conducted this research together, specifically the TSA and DG East. Can you please show me the slides? Next slide, because we are not in sync with the presentation. So I want to show our partners once again. It's important for us to highlight that our cooperation that was happening at that stage. As I've said, we worked with SEED very fruitfully and productively with UNDP, which is another important partner, DG East, another USAID program, and of course, another USAID program, TSA. And our continuous partner in terms of the field work was Kyiv company, Kyiv Institute of Sociology. And throughout these years, they have been conducting this research with us, and we are sincerely grateful to them. With such support, we have conducted 3 waves of this national survey. It was based on the SCORE methodology, and then rescore. After the second phase of our program in 2025-2026, we had to take a step back and reflect on what is going on in Ukraine. This is a protracted war. People are adjusting and adapting. We had to look what is important to them in terms of resilience and cohesion. That's why we conducted a holistic survey involving qualitative research, as Duncan mentioned. Our partner was Metrica, and we looked into Ukrainians' perception of the social cohesion and resilience. What are the factors and drivers are behind these aspects, positively or negatively impacting the cohesion? And the findings of this qualitative research was processed, and we used them to design the methodology for the quantitative research. And the Kyiv International Sociology Institute, they conducted the field work. Again, we are sincerely grateful to them, because you have to understand that this is a complicated situation for surveys, for getting in touch with people. That's why we are really grateful to our partners. And when it comes to the quantitative part of our surveys, it was based on the experience and the analytical method of Ipsos. This approach was designed and validated in over more than 20 countries, and it was based on the theoretical foundations of social cohesion radar. And we are happy that this research was implemented in Ukraine. It was tried out here. Our colleagues from the Renaissance Foundation, they used this research in Ukraine, and that's why we are able to see the changes that were happening in the Ukrainian society based on this methodology. And at the qualitative stage, we used the findings for the quantitative research. We took some of the evidence from the SHARP surveys, and we included the links to SHARP presentations to indicate this research. Now, a couple of words about the design of our surveys. Let me explain. First, the quality stage. We did it online, given the security situation. And when it comes to the focus groups, we contacted general population, frontline areas. We specifically focused on the frontline areas. And during the survey, we assessed different perspective of female and male respondents, and we also had dedicated groups, focus groups with IDPs, as well as with the returnees who returned from abroad and now are now living in Ukraine. When it comes to in-depth interviews, given the sensitivity of the issues, we conducted such interviews with the veterans, with people with disability, to get them on board. And on top of that, we engaged internal and external experts, including professionals and practitioners working in the social cohesion and resilience field. Some of them you will see at our panel today, as well as the leaders of our strategic projects. They took part in this research. We incorporated their perspective in our survey to understand what additional evidence we need to implement our research and to conduct and get the data that we need. When it comes to the quantitative stage, we surveyed our respondents using CATI method. We surveyed over 4,000 people using the representative national sample. We used different categories like gender, sex, age, current residence of the respondents. I'm now talking about Ukraine-controlled areas. And apart from that, we also have additional samples, booster samples for certain groups to be able to explore their attitude and perception of the social cohesion and resilience and the drivers behind them. I'm talking about the veterans. We have a sample of IDPs and a general sample of 4,000 respondents. It enabled us to explore the perspective of the youth, of the elderly people, and people with disability. We are processing this data. They will be published in our final analytical report. And a small announcement: this data will be open. They will be publicly available, and if you need them, you can reach out to us, and we will share the data with you. This is one way to cooperate with us. And on top of that, you can reach out to us with the issues, research issues you are interested in, and we are open to making sure that these findings are as available as possible, and to make sure that there is no duplication among the researchers. And just very briefly about the resilience concept that we are working with under PFRU, and it was the basis also for the research. We view the resilience in 3 dimensions: resilience as a survival, community resilience, and societal resilience. And these 3 key dimensions or pillars, we view them within 5 components: safety and security, personal, economic security, social cohesion, horizontal and vertical cohesion. And at the qualitative stage, we also looked at the sense of justice that is becoming more and more relevant, psychological well-being, and the safety and security, psychological safety and security. We did not delve much into that area, but it's still present in our research. And based on this research, we will conduct the presentation. And now I would like to give the floor and hand over to our colleagues from Ipsos, to Olena Babak, Deputy Director, Ipsos Ukraine, Customer Director, and Irina Baleva, Director, Ipsos Ukraine, and they will present the results of this research. So please welcome our guests.
Thank you so much for attention to our research, and it's great to see that almost all the seats are taken in the rooms. And before I give the floor to Irina, we're going to do it in duo today, so to keep you active. So what we're going to voice, are top results, but also we're going to couple it with analysis. So we're going to speak of resilience in 2 dimensions: in the resilience in everyday life, how we treat it as economically safe, and whether we have access to critical services that we need for survival, and also about resilience as an analytical tool, Ipsos Global, that we can look into Ukraine and looking at dynamics as part of research that was supported by the Renaissance Foundation in 2025. And now I'll give the floor to Irina, that will give an overview of the everyday resilience, so to say. So we'll start with the war experiences. About 9 out of 10 people in Ukraine have experienced missile or drone attacks, but also for many, war had deeper implications and impacts. Almost half of the relatives are in combat zone. 44% experienced family separation. 25% were displaced within Ukraine, and 20% had their property damaged, and about 70% lost a close family member. So, resilience as survival. We're now looking at 2 dimensions, emotional state and the sense of normalcy. When it comes to the emotional state, So 55% of Ukrainians describe their emotional state as neutral, and only 60% describe it as good. And 63% agreed that they can maintain a sense of normal daily routine. So other dimensions are personal safety and economic safety. So 63% have the stable sense of source of income. And it's almost the same by macro regions, but the sense of safety is different. Only 41% feel safe in frontline regions, and over 80% in the west and western Ukraine. So access to utilities. So this is a macro dimension, a macro split by city and region. So in terms of potable water and power, so both cities and the urban and rural population has equal access, but centralized water and centralized heating, they are accessible to a different extent. This is a structural story, so to say, quite typical for our country, and it has this has its impacts in terms of how we perceive access to the key infrastructure, in terms of proximity, hromadas to the front lines. Again, so our western regions more to the rear, they're more urbanized, and we can see the percentage of people that do not have access to centralized water and heating is higher, but the pharmacies and potable water are accessible despite the proximity to the front lines. So in terms of the bottom line, so the sense of safety, it just goes in line with the front line. So the closer to the front line, the lower is the sense of safety. Is 4 out of 10 people for frontline communities, and the level of income is stable. 63% speaks in favor of stable income, but quite a high percentage of households cannot afford anything but covering basic needs. So connectivity is accessible, pharmacies and potable water they are accessible and affordable for both frontline and rural communities, but for frontline communities, the situation is a bit worse in terms of connectivity. And in terms of centralized water and heating, are more regional. The problems have regional character. So now we'll get down to the key part, our resilience and social cohesion. So before we get further, I have to explain about the model. So Ipsos has been using this approach in 27 countries. And this is based on 3 key dimensions. The index that we receive is informed by 3 dimensions. The first one is people, which comes to social relations, the bonds between citizens, how we perceive and accept diversity and sharing an outlook on life. Another important pillar or component is the people-state relations or connectedness. To what extent we identify ourselves as citizen of our state. Ukrainians, as Vitaly has mentioned, feel connected to the state and are proud to be Ukrainians. During the war, it showed. And the third pillar is the shared norms, um, um, uh, which is an important indicator that needs to be routinely measured. Yes, now the shared norms and common good is an important factor. How these norms are shared, how we respect the law and regulations and order, and how we our perceptions of corruption also play the role here. This is validated in many countries model, also in Ukraine. This is the key output of our study. You probably have seen it on the handout. So the SCI index is plus 17. It's marked in green. So we are limited in time. That's why you can just study it at your leisure. So you can see the main indicators and the distribution of answers. Blue, dark blue is strongly agree, orange is strongly disagree, some strongly disagree. And in terms of civil identity and connectedness to the state, 88% claim that they feel strong connectedness to the state. They identify themselves as Ukrainian. So this is a good medium of our connectedness and of the basis of the SCI index, along with the willingness to support others and to work for a common good. Thanks to the Renaissance Foundation, we have the dynamic data, and we have an opportunity to compare, we can see that we're facing some changes. The connectedness has the positive dynamics, but we have some tension in terms of, and some drop in terms of social relations. They are a little bit under pressure, nevertheless, we have positive dynamics in terms of connectedness to the state, but unfortunately, the trust to the political system is dropping, and the perception of justice is on the same level, since people show readiness to help each other, the bonds between the citizens have a positive dynamics, and this is a good foundation for and component building stone of our SCI. So there, on the previous slide, we have dynamics, and here you can see that how Ukrainians delegate trust. The highest level of trust is among Ukrainians, the elderly, and the IDPs. People need support, and they believe that this support will be granted. The lowest here is there are groups where this indicator is lower, 60% of veterans and 61% of working population. Age 26-54. This is a big group with a lower indicator, and it's prevailing. But most of the dynamics is positive. this was a different question, and it has its history. And in the analytical report, you can see the potentially the dynamics. Now, the state of connectedness to Ukraine is the highest, but to the hromada is the lowest. And IDPs feel their strongest connectedness to their home cities, and we can see that there is a difference. It's 30% difference that they feel more connected to their home community rather than their host community. The same goes for by hromada and by locality. So in terms of our international data, diversity plays an important part, and here we have positive findings. 72% speaks in favor of quite good diversity indicator. Veterans have a lower mark here, but they are over 50%. Those who perceive diversity as a very good thing. IDPs and veterans have bigger risks of social isolation. They are at the bottom of the chart, 59 and 53%, and here there is a high number of people who experience solitude, 1 in 5. How comfortable you will feel interacting with different social groups, and the conventional ranking, but from the mathematical standpoint, it's still a rating. Ukrainian, non-Ukrainian speakers, and the lowest is residents of TOTs. Of course, we are in touch with people from TOT, and here the attitude towards them is a bit strained. TOTs is an important focus, as I understand, for current and future state policies. That's why we have paid considerable attention to this, and we will pay even more attention in the analytical report. So we realized that TOT residents they receive the good level, the due level of support. Only 29% of such residents feel they receive due support and recognition. And whereas 53%, which I have mentioned, feel that they're comfortable closely interacting with citizens on TOTs. So when we ask about TOTs, how comfortable you feel interacting with them, people from other regions, not from TOTs, they receive more trust than people that have come from TOTs. Even though 76% of the respondents claim that the level of trust is normal. I think that we're a little bit behind the agenda. So social ties are quite strong. Bonds between citizens are strong. Belonging to Ukraine is the strongest. And in terms of social isolation, the state needs to pay more attention to IDPs and veterans, which is being done, hopefully, and especially the residents of TOTs. Unfortunately, they are the group that other people feel they're not comfortable in interacting, and this is the group that feels that they don't receive the due support. So connectedness to the state, between the state and the citizens. But we'll talk of national identity and the trust to institutions and their just treatment. Ukrainian identity. Almost every respondent identifies themselves as a citizen of Ukraine. 98% of the respondents, 88% of the respondents, I'll remind you, strongly agreed. And this result is identical for all the groups that we have surveyed. Trust to the government, 59% of the respondents trust the government or political system to do what is right. But, you know, the lower percentage is among adults aged 26, 54, and veterans. So I receive fair treatment as a citizen of Ukraine. 73% of the respondents feel that. But the adult males, aged 26, 54, and veterans, we have lower percentage for them. To what extent do you trust each of these persons or institutions? As we can see, the levels of trust vary quite considerably regarding by the institution. The armed forces and the state emergency service receive the highest level of trust, whereas the state institutions have 1/3 of this trust and lower. So we have an opportunity to see the dynamics, to compare, and these are comparable data starting from, we can see the dynamics starting from 2022, and we can see that the armed forces has been receiving trust, the high level of trust for all these throughout all these years. Then from 2024 to now, we can see that the levels that we're seeing have stabilized. The trust in local institutions. So local institutions receive higher trust than national institutions, both in frontline and rare regions. The elderly and IDPs have higher level of trust to the local administrations, but the highest level of trust are among the local administrations. And for starosta, the elders, we have most of the replies from the rural population, of course. This is the data compared to other years. Look, you can see that there is a drop of trust to local government since in 2022, but afterwards it has stabilized. So what are the macro drivers of trust in national institutions? What helps us rebuild trust and what stands in the way? So we have split this analysis into two types of trust, which is important. The trust to national institutions, where a great part is played, the trust in media and the perceive of fair treatment and perceived corruption and perception and satisfaction with public services. Whereas the perceived corruption, it lowers the trust and the trust to local administrations, to mayors, to the elders. The satisfaction with public services is on the top. Trust in media is important, the same as perception of recognition. there are other factors, but we have seen the ones that shape trust the most. So satisfaction with public services. The highest level of dissatisfaction is with the police, there's healthcare and public transport. And we can compare Ukraine and frontline communities. So if we see that the level of satisfaction in frontline communities, the satisfaction is higher towards their first responders, the highest dissatisfaction rate is with shelters, 23% where they are missing. So 40% of respondents said, and the schooling and many people don't use psychological support, but so awareness of ways to take part in local decisions is low generally, and it's lower in frontline regions. Perceptions of corruption at national and local levels. Corruption is seen as widespread on the higher level than the local level, highest level. 1 in 2 citizens respondents say that corruption is widespread in the government. So what we have learned, civic identity is strong. 98% define themselves as Ukrainian citizens first. So trust varies by institution. So the highest levels of trust are to the armed forces and the state emergency service, the lowest levels of trust in political institutions and the courts and the judiciary. And some groups report a weaker citizen-state connectedness, just the level of trust is lower, especially veterans and male adults. So trust is shaped by experience and fairness. So the perception of recognition and trust in media are important factors, whereas perceptions of corruptions, which undermines trust, is seen as widespread on the highest level and less widespread on the local level.
And the final part of our presentation of our index is basically our shared norms or common good, as we call it. And what you can see is that the solidarity norms, basically meaning I'm responsible towards helping others, people have to respect the laws and the way things are done in our country. The indicator is quite high. At the same time, as a follow-up to what Irina said, we still have the perception of corruption in our country. 55% say yes, and 35% say probably yes. Now, when it comes to civic activities, first of all, it is focused on mutual support. 86% are saying they are volunteering or donating for the armed forces of Ukraine. 72% help vulnerable groups. And when it comes to informal channels as petitions or engagement with the government, public consultations, there is a fewer lower percentage of people involved in that. Probably most of them are unaware of such opportunities. When it comes to perceived corruption, it's perceived not only as political corruption at the government, but also at the business level. And in our common life, 28% are saying there is corruption in the daily life. what we learned here is that the solidarity norms are shared by many people. Formal activities are less popular, mostly informal activities like volunteering or donations. And when it comes to corruption, it is often linked to the highest levels of government, and only 28% say it is present in our daily lives. Okay, so social cohesion in Ukraine is markedly higher than in Poland and Germany. In Ukraine, it's plus 17. In Germany, it's minus almost 22. In Poland, minus 30. Because of this super high connectedness, the link between the citizens and the government. This indicator is quite high in Ukraine, it's plus 40, and our neighbors have minus 15, minus 12 in Poland. Now, the final remarks, what the findings tell us. First of all, social cohesion remains a key source of resilience in Ukraine. The survival is important, is essential, and these are important internal indicators and drivers supporting the society from inside. It's important to keep in mind the support and support the vulnerable groups. The overall cohesion is quite high, but IDPs and veterans face significant challenges, and we have to remember them. And it's basically about it comes down to the social ties, and the infrastructure is a priority for recovery. Rural communities have the same level of solidarity as compared to the urban communities, but in terms of the infrastructure, they are less well-to-do. They need more attention in terms of the infrastructure support. Thank you. Thank you, Irina and Olena, for this presentation. As you can see, this was very rich, a lot of different evidence. I think the audience has a lot of questions, and we are moving on to the Q&A. And I would like to say that we will take questions from the audience, but also online in turn, of course, if we have enough questions online. My colleague, Mikhailo, he will read out questions from online audience, people who are listening to us online. Again, in order to ask a question, you can see that there is a QR code. You need to scan it, and you can leave your question there in the box. And we have people supporting us in the audience. If you have a question, please raise your hand, introduce yourself. Hello, Tatiana Lazan, Right for Protection Charity Fund. We are coordinating veteran support. Before that, we worked with IDPs. First of all, I would like to thank you for this invitation, for this opportunity to listen to the presentation, and for your willingness to share the data. I already see that this data is very valuable. I have a question and a comment. First, common question: who do you define as a veteran? Because according to the Ukrainian legislation, veterans can be active combatants and civilian persons. My opinion, which is not corroborated by the data, the answers can be different depending on the status of the person. Is it a combatant or a civilian person? And my comment, it's about the return to the civilian life, as well as it's about the IDPs. What we can say is that the IDPs and veterans faced displacement anyway. And when we are talking about the IDPs, we need to talk about the integration. And when it comes to the veterans, what we need to talk about is the reintegration. So what I mean is, I'd like to talk about isolation. If we are talking about IDPs or veterans who have just returned, in both cases, we need to talk about the adaptation, about building and rebuilding social ties. And again, when it comes to timeline, we can talk about the international timeline, about Ukrainian timeline. In Ukraine, we don't have any set deadlines for that. And again, when it comes to isolation, during this adaptation period, uh, the isolation and reintegration, they are happening naturally. And when it comes to the reintegration, the support that is provided or was not provided, it's basically a negative driver for the social isolation. Despite these people being in part of the community for several years, they are still isolated. I understand that this survey is not that targeted because, as the expert humanitarian support community, as part of our work, we realized that we need to do more targeting activities. But for me, the nature of this isolation is interesting, and thanks to having here the government, we need to raise this issue and of tackling the isolation at different levels. Thank you. Well, I'm in charge of the research. That's why let me take your first question regarding the veterans. The research targeted both groups, the active combatants and those who returned to their civilian life. And we identified them as persons who took part in the hostilities since 2014. When it comes to your comment, we are grateful to you for this comment. And at the analysis stage, if we have enough evidence around IDPs, we will share and we will split them in terms of their timeline, when they returned, how much time they spent to get integrated or reintegrated, and we will try to see any differences if they are available. This sample is quite large. That's why we think we would be able to make this analysis. Thank you. And to make sure, yeah, we have quite significant sample. We have around 600 veterans, many IDPs, and when it comes to our long-term plans, is to take a deeper dive into these groups, into understanding their needs. Probably we will issue separate reports and conduct separate sessions to look at the issues you are talking. And we are ready for collaboration with you to prepare such sessions and reports in order to answer questions that are relevant to such organizations as yours. Just a brief comment. There is research, but it's limited. It's not targeted, and it's about the issue of veterans being targeted, and the female veterans are targeted, and that's why I urge you also to work with the female veterans issues. Now, second question. Thank you for this research, for this important effort. I have a short, quick question regarding the infrastructure. There was a separate slide dedicated to that around the access to pharmacies. Is it pharmacies or medications? Pharmacies. Yeah, I understand that I have access to the pharmacies, but I may not have access to the medications. These are two different things, I think. I think you need to look into that. Overall, you covered that issue of medical support. This issue is quite controversial. And now when it comes to the access to the centralized power, water, and so on, maybe you could conduct some focus groups to identify different needs, because it's important today when we're the distributed generation, distributed grid, because we can look into the data from the risks risks related to the cohesion and resilience. For example, you had a finding that the proximity or non-proximity to the active fighting areas, it influences this dimension. Well, we did look into that, and in the analytical report, we will split the data into and disaggregate the data into front area of active fighting and area remote from active fighting. I mean, we need to understand that our energy sector and other services are going to change and evolve, but our task was we aim to look at the way the government is providing services, because people don't care how the services are provided. Is it a major combined heat and power plant or a small generation? And hopefully in the going forward, we will do additional research focused onto that. Let me also comment on this. When it comes to qualitative research, as I've said, we focused on the frontline communities, and in these communities, people basically considered if they have water from somewhere, they considered it centralized water supply. So it doesn't matter for people if they need, if there is a water well that is supplying water to them, or water is supplied from some other place. Thank you. We have taken 2 questions from the offline audience. Now, I think it would be fair to listen to the online audience. Mikhailo will read out the questions. Yes, thank you, Ruslan. First question from an online participant. They ask for clarifications around the way you measured the connectedness with the government. Right now in Ukraine it's +40, and in Poland and Germany it's a negative value. Well, as I've said, we have 3 questions that we used, and the key driver behind this high value is that I feel myself as a citizen of this country. This is the statement that we asked the respondents to confirm, and as a result, Ukraine as a leading this indicator. In Poland and Germany, they didn't have those unifying drivers. As a result, we can see this difference. On top of that, there are 2 additional questions. The trust in the political system, in our case, it's negative, and it's obvious, it's historical in Ukraine not to trust the government. The actual dynamics is actually positive around that. And second question is corruption. This dimension is also not performing well, but it offset by our civic identity. We feel belonging to this country, unlike our neighbors. We have these great results. Well, as a follow-up to this question, when we're talking about connectedness with the government, I'm sure the audience online and offline, they can see that it's connectedness with the government. But it's basically the connectedness with the country, not with the government only. I think we can take another question from the online audience, because we had 2 offline questions. Okay, Ruslan, there is a quick question and another one more detailed. I will read both of them. And I will start with the quick one. Colleagues are asking to tell when the full report is going to be published and what information will be provided, the transcripts, data arrays. Well, the analytical report is scheduled to be released in late September. After that, the data will be in the public domain. I'm not sure about the transcripts, but the data arrays will be available everyone who is registered, we will share with you the report and we'll give you the links. Okay, any questions from the audience?
Journalist. I write the Public Sphere newsletter. Thank you so much for your report and all this data and so forth. I have a question about the drop in trust in political institutions. The drop was quite stark in terms of the president and the cabinet of ministers and the Rada. But you also said that this is kind of a historic problem for Ukraine. Do you see the drop in, like the 2022 really high levels as sort of an exception to the rule, or would you say that this is sort of like a new era, or would you say this is sort of going back to what it was before the war?
Thank you for this question. Actually, yes, in 2022, there was a surge in trust for all political institutions, and we did had a unity around our flag, as we call it. That's basically what we borrowed from a phrase we borrowed from English. Yes, in 2022, we had huge surge in the rating of the president, local government, central government. But going forward and later on, these ratings dropped. After 2024, we saw that the trust in these institutions plateaued. It stays more or less the same. And right now, these ratings, they are higher as compared to what we had before the full-scale invasion. Okay, I think we can take one online question. Mikhailo was going to read it out anyway. Yeah, we have a comment from a participant named Alina. What we can see is that social cohesion is growing amid instability because we have war, corruption, and other problems are uniting people and moving them towards volunteering. For example, people are making meshes for the armed forces, they are making candles. There is a growing municipal collaboration, different ties that we didn't have before. And Poland is economically more resilient, but less resilient in terms of society, which means that the economy doesn't equate to the society. Now, the question is, why didn't you look at the Ukrainians abroad? Right now, there are around 8 to 10 to 9 million Ukrainians abroad. Given the uncertainty in the EU around the temporary protection, I think we need to keep them in the research. Well, let me take this question and comment. You are quite right in terms of commenting, and during the qualitative stage, people told us that we are resilient. We will stay as long as it takes. And Alina, that's what basically our respondents told us. But we want a normal life. We are tired of being resilient. So let's do it. Let's do something. But we will hold on. And on the other hand, we want to go back to normal life without the war. But not just peace. We don't need peace for the sake of peace. We need victory. And when it comes to the question, and Ukrainians abroad, they are an important part of the Ukrainian society, and we are not going to ignore them. During the qualitative stage, we included them into our sample. We looked at their perspectives and views of the social resilience, their well-being. people who returned, they were included in the quantitative research. And going forward, we are planning to engage with Ukrainians abroad. But at this stage, we factored in only returnees. I believe it's a valuable group, and we will pay attention to them. Thank you. And the last final question from the audience.
Thank you so much for starting the presentation.
Швейцарії.
Very useful information to digest. I just had a small question on the perception on the temporarily occupied territories. We saw that there are quite a lot of negative readings. Have you seen this as consistent across Ukraine, or are there regional differences in those perceptions?
It's consistent. No difference between regions.
Я б хотіла ще додати і сконцентрувати вашу увагу на те, що, в принципі, ми бачили, що це така ситуація є по відношенню до окупованих територій.
So the situation in terms of TOT level of trust, there are people that think that this category is overlooked and it needs more support and more attention needs to be given to this category. So I think that more work needs to be done in this direction. So our citizens that are living in the government-controlled areas there, they want to know more. They want to be in contact with people that are now temporarily living in TOTs. I think that we are about to wrap up our first part of the study presentation, and now is the time for the coffee break. So it would be great if you're back here, or so it's 11:25. So maybe if you're back here in 10 minutes, so that
Отже, ми починаємо другу.
So we are starting our second part of today's presentation, the panel discussion. Hope the findings of the study were interesting for you and you had a chance to exchange your thoughts during the coffee break. So we're now at the panel discussion for a deep dive into our main topic. So we're expecting that we'll reflect on certain aspects of the study that you brought up. You're welcome to share your thoughts, to maybe pinpoint what was interesting for you. Let's get down to discussion, but before we do that, let me introduce our honored participants. So left to right. Nathan Smith, Director of Social Cohesion, Strategic Project Partnership Fund for Resilient Ukraine. Yulia Tishchenko, Chairwoman of the Board of the UCIPR, Co-founder of the National Platform for Resilience and Social Cohesion. Vitaly Rudenki, Head of the Security and National Resilience Program, Frontier Institute. And Andriy Seletsky, Head of Novorontsovka Settlement Military Administration, Berislav Rayon, Kherson Oblast. So with such panelists, we're going probably to have interesting viewpoints on social cohesion and resilience, because we have the representatives of analytical and research pool and practitioners that are implementing projects, working to boost resilience and cohesion, and the representative of the local administration, local government, where this resilience is taking shape and being challenged for how strong it is. So our panel discussion is structured the following way. We have 3 key questions that will be built around the assessment of the current situation, then also the outlook on change and future and the challenges that await us. I'll be grateful if each panelist could take about 5 minutes in addressing the questions. So the first question that I'd like to address to our panelists is how would you describe the resilience, Ukraine's resilience as of today, and based on your experience, your work, and the practical outcomes of your work, what helps Ukrainian society remain resilient in the context of this prolonged war? It's been over 4 years now. So, Julia, would you like to start? As you say, I may go first. Thank you for this robust research, and hopefully we will see a more detailed result. Resilience is not about the protection and the right to protection. It's more on adaptive mechanisms of the society, of the governments, of the state and society organism to respond to these challenges. In 2022, what did we have? We had mobilization, resilience, and when in response to the crisis, when the state, when it was hard for the state to really cope with a number of challenges, that's when cross-sectoral collaboration and civil society stepped in. But for today, the mobilization resilience, it's transforming. We can see it in our research and in our platforms. We are looking at resilience through the lens of risks and significant threats of this adaptive model. We could see when we had our dialogue sessions in 12 Ukrainian regions. These are not the weren't focus groups, but dialogue sessions, and we looked at the social dimension of the resilience. We had Kharkiv, Mykolaiv, Kherson, Vinnytsia, Transcarpathia, hromadas, frontline and rare. What we could see is that safety and security were the main trigger for all the hromadas, but there was this fatigue on the brink of adaptivity. I wouldn't say that it's the verge, but this adaptivity is constantly under strain, under different circumstances and challenges. This societal resilience, it hasn't transformed into robust institutional tools and didn't boost the effectiveness of state institutions. So in terms of trust, and well, our research shows close the findings to what we saw today. So people trust to those who are close to them. Well, the armed forces of Ukraine, yes. The civil society organizations, community-based organizations, CESU, the activities of which are evident. Sometimes the trust is high to local government, but it varies by hromada. And this trust and ability to collaborate is an important factor that contributes to resilience. You asked about certain risks, resilience related, and in the future they can be scenario based, highly scenario based, on the way the Russian aggression progresses, but there is latent social strain, and it's related not just to corruption perceptions. What people voiced during the dialogue sessions is the need for just vulnerable groups or not so vulnerable groups need that, or in terms of distribution of resources, in terms of access to critical services, a lack of transparency in decision making, or hazy entry points to certain processes. They contribute to higher tensions, also to economic decisions or distribution of property. So if it doesn't improve, we are going to face even higher risks, instability risks in hromadas. There is latent social tension or strain, like between veterans and those who didn't serve. In rare regions, what we heard was that sometimes veterans hide the fact that they are veterans, so that they are accepted and so that they are employed. And this is a challenge that needs to be worked on. There are some risks that are region specific. For example, we have always had some what was popular, the things that about language sensitivities and regional specifics. But now when we look at Chernihiv Oblast, there are some things, some challenges that are related to religious affiliation that can maybe develop into something more serious in the future. When it comes to horizontal ties, it's important to pinpoint that hromadas can preserve their level of resilience thanks to volunteers, to different civil or community networks. And so since 2014 and 2022, what is related to IDPs and what was brought up during dialogue sessions and other interviews, people say, we don't say anymore, we don't refer to the people, to new arrivals, so to say, or other arrivals as internally displaced people. We call them new residents. This was rather an exception, but almost everywhere people claim there is a process of integration, but it's uneven, so to say, maybe, irrespective of where people were displaced from, but people feel the displaced people, they feel there some sort of isolation, or for conservative hromadas, you need to know those entry points, but not always are those entry points evident. Or also, we need to mention that in different hromadas, there are different resilience levels from mobilization, ranging from mobilization to everyday life, and your research findings show. We see that in your research findings as well. That it depends on the experiences. This resilience depends on the experiences of war, but also the economical matters and structural risks, so to say, also influence a lot the psychological or adaptation state, and the risks of losing touch. The risks that exist because of the war. Thank you, Yulia. You have touched upon several questions that we were planning to pose. Maybe we could reformat our panel discussion. So if panelists would like to touch upon other things, I don't want to limit you. So if you want to touch upon risks and perspectives at this point, you can go ahead. So Vitaly, the Frontier Institute, your analytical think tank, or whatever your position yourself as, has done a lot of research in terms of future, how Ukrainian society has been changing, about new ties, new senses. Maybe you could give us your view on the challenges, on potential change in terms of societal resilience. So I would like to maybe to explain about the definitions. How do we understand resilience? So let's think of a bridge and a lorry truck. So it can be deformed and then it returns back to its former state. Then the system of ties. Let's think of a forest, and we have some hares, some wolves. They maybe they interact, and this ecosystem, as far as they interact, is stable. And the third point is when wolves are bored, they invite the foxes. And that's a different situation. So this is, I'm talking about the preservance of ties. So why is it about societal cohesion? Why is it about cohesion? So we're small and the enemy is big. So we can preserve ourselves when we act in synchro. And we can do it when there is a cohesion. So, and one type of cohesion is horizontal cohesion. So that's when we talk to each other, like here in this place. We exchange thoughts, we help each other when we need to find some contacts, for example, to help others after shelling, so to fix their windows and so on. And another type of coherence is about helping people to absorb shocks. So in 2022, or previously, it was easier to absorb shocks. We helped each other, and mobilization resilience took place. But the problem is that we are different. People are different, they have different interests, and we start noticing that I have different interests. I like green socks, someone else likes red socks. And the reality is that we sort of drift apart in terms of our interests. And it's difficult to preserve this mobilization cohesion. And what has been helping us is vertical cohesion. which comes to how much do we trust the institutions that really shape the way we live. So, in fact, we had a huge deposit of trust at the start of the full-scale invasion, and the huge deposit of trust to the central government. And that's when the central government perceived it as given, and they didn't think of long-term coordination. And their capacity stayed at the pre-invasion level. And that's when we see the horizontal mobilization is almost in ruins. People have just straddled away to different comfort zones, and now it's there wasn't really learning in the state on how to pull these old people together. And now the regulator thinks, oh, why are these people different? Why are they not on the same level as in 2022 in terms of mobilization and cohesion? But that's because the resource that we have is limited. So in the protracted war, there is a wonderful word that can be a sticker on our mirror or on our wall, the management and strategic management. Thank you. So we have representatives of frontline community here. Andrei, I would like to give the floor to you. We have a lot of methodological, philosophical discussions, but cohesion is now being tested in communities, and we would like to hear from you on the perspectives for your hromada, where people are confronted with challenges on the daily basis.
Thank you. Thank you for. I'm happy to. Thank you for having me. What is interesting, and I'm really willing to share our local experience. What is missing in the overall picture is that in our local community we are missing the focus, and that's why we are happy that we have our voice. When it comes to the cohesion, our community is on the bank of the former reservoir, Kakhovka Reservoir. We are 6 kilometers away from the Russian forces. They are on the other side of the Dnieper River. We basically have a large meadow around our community, and the sky is dominated almost completely by the Russian drones. Our community is 42 kilometers towards the western part, and the drones are everywhere. When it comes to social cohesion, I totally support Vitaly. I joined the military administration from the horizontal level. I was a volunteer for the Red Cross, and I saw how the government was fleeing in 2022 while the volunteers stayed there. And this trust in the government, from the people, it basically saved our government, because in March the government fled, and only in October I was appointed as the head of the military administration. And before that, from March to September, there was a vacuum, but there were no kind of revolutionary movements, no different activities. And I think it was wise to appoint a volunteer not necessarily me, to use and leverage these horizontal ties. I'm not authorized to talk about other regions. I can talk only about the Kherson Oblast. And in our region, given all the security risks, given the destroyed harvest, drones, death, what helps is these horizontal ties. They really helping me to stay in touch with the population. For example, on our media networks, we don't delete the comments. We are using all sorts of social media, and we don't delete any comments, whatever the nature of the comments, how senseless they are. Apart, of course, from the Russian propaganda, we delete that and inform and report it to the security forces. And the same practice, the same approach is used by the oblast government. And I think it's important to stay in touch with the people, because if you look at empty comment section in the social networks of other local governments, basically, I don't believe that it's true. At, that was my initial position. Our people is wise, and we just need to let them talk in the comment section. And I think it's a step forward towards the development of our society. Of course, sometimes it is painful. You are trying to find resources, you are trying to do something in a poor local rural community to develop our community, and people are calling you a scum. It demotivates. And when it comes to the social cohesion, the huge factor is basically how we define the what is social cohesion. Are women making missions for the armed forces? Is the fact that they are making missions for the armed forces a demonstration of social cohesion? Of course, it is support for the armed forces. It's great. And for example, if we have to dismantle the anti-drone nets to be able to harvest the grain. Well, that should be done by the local government, because that's part of their job. And in my community, we have volunteers who are making the meshes. At some point, we tried to support them, but they refused. We just gave them the room. They are working in this space, and in every settlement, they have 10 to 15 people who are making meshes for the armed forces. They are engaging with the military units directly. We are trying to facilitate this work, because sometimes people just do it on their own. And when we urge people to and reach out to people to ask them to help us, for example, to clear the rubble after the shelling, they tell us, why do we need to do your job? So this marker is important for our understanding what to do next. In my community, there is half of the pre-war population. When it comes to the quality of this population, I'm not going to talk about that. I didn't do the research, but what I know is that 70% of the businesses are closed, are shut down, and when it comes to a qualified employee for the local council, it's really hard to find such a qualified person. And it doesn't matter whether you find a qualified person or not, your job has to be done, the job of the local council. That's why the question is about the quality of the perception among the people. If you look at the Telegram channel, we post some comments when it comes to support that we are providing to the local residents. For example, humanitarian support. They totally support us. A lot of activity. And when it comes to identity, if we are talking about identity, as previous speakers mentioned, and we are, just as a reminder, we are 6 kilometers away from the Russian front line. We have quality, quality reception of the Russian radios. So the residents are able to listen to the Russian radio. Another work stream was the heraldic studies that we conducted in our community. We came up with our coat of arms, and in our community there are around 6,000 people, and out of this number, just guess how many people participated in the survey for the coat of arms. Only 240 residents. Only 240 residents out of 6,000 participated. How did you conduct the survey? Well, via the Telegram, via Facebook, at the humanitarian hubs. We asked people, if you are an elderly person, just vote through the paper, and sorry, we will have a separate part for the questions, and I will give you the floor later. So it's great that we have this event, and I'm not criticizing. I'm not saying that those people are bad. I'm not going to stay in this role until the end of my life. Before that, I was a volunteer. Now I'm turned into the main scumbag. Another important point, when we are talking about any long-term decisions, for example, symbols of our community, or do we need to preserve some historical sites? For example, the 18th century bridges, they are still in our community. I'm trying to engage with the people, with the community. I can use my authority to push through these decisions around the bridges. But people believe that it's not the right time. And then we look at the Maslow's pyramid and ask people, what do you need? They say, we need meshes, we need humanitarian support, we need logistic infrastructure, because we have a highway from the community which is totally controlled by the Russian drones. It would make sense to protect it with the anti-drone meshes, but it's Ukravtodor agency that has the mandate over this highway. But when it comes to mowing the grass, it's the local council's job. And people hold me accountable for the grass, for the anti-drone meshes. That's why we create tunnels inside our community. Of course, it's expensive, and the farmers are saying we need subsidies because we are losing the harvest, and we are, as a local government, we are trying to subsidize them. And the community's budget, 93% comes from the agrarians, from the farmers. And if I don't support them, they will oppose me, and they will say I paid my salary to myself, but didn't support them. So I'm going on outreach activities abroad to raise funds and to support our farmers. And we have raised around 100,000 euros for anti-drone measures, for anti-drone nets. But still, people perceive me as a scumbag. They say, why did you build the anti-drone net tunnels this way? For example, it doesn't work for some of the residents, for this elderly woman who lives in the house nearby. And this specific woman doesn't have anti-drone nets over her house, and that's why I'm a scumbag. And I understand that. I know that people are traumatized or they are stressed out. I've lived in that community since 2022. What I'm talking is that social cohesion and resilience, they should be disaggregated. I don't know how to do that, but what I can see from the community's experience, our people who are living inside the community and who are living outside of the community, but come to us to receive humanitarian aid, they have different perspectives. I'm not trying to clamp down on people who don't live in the community but come to get the aid, because otherwise they will blame me. So I'm not doing that. If people feel they need humanitarian aid, I don't mind. It's the humanitarian organizations that are providing this help. So when it comes to social cohesion, we need to accurately measure that to understand and get the insight into the perspectives and views of these people. And that was a great point about the veterans. The veterans can see themselves as veterans or as civilian persons. Some of them are IDPs, so who they actually are, veterans or IDPs. And it's important to explore that. When it comes to pharmacies, it turns out that a mobile pharmacy is not regarded as a pharmacy. Kherson Military Administration, they provide mobile pharmacies with different medications available. You can call them and book medications you need. But not all residents are satisfied with that. And you have to understand that pharmacies, they are for-profit businesses. And to sum it up, what I can say is that people accuse me of many things, but the biggest accusation in different villages was why I didn't install his own stores and pharmacies to make the goods more accessible to the local residents. I told them I cannot do that as an official, a local government official. And so my point is that we need to take a nuanced approach to these people. Thank you, Andrei. It's true. We need to have a local insight because our survey is national. It's nationally representative. That's why your perception, your perspectives are really valuable. And we are going to integrate that into our research design. Now, I would like to hand over to our colleague, to Nathan Smith, head of the social resilience at PFRU. What I would like to ask you, given the discussion that we had around the challenges and key trends, and given that your stream deals with social resilience and cohesion, what are the most valuable things that or takeaways from our research? How you are going to implement that to adjust your modeling, adjust your programming, and any other thoughts about that?
But you may start from basically assessment of the general situation. And that's
Дякую, Руслані, і дякую за запрошення сюди сьогодні.
Thank you, Ruslan. Thank you for having me here. In the first place, I would like to greet everyone, the colleagues, your team. So, my congratulations, so to say, on this event and the research. I know that it's a result of hard work, and I'll be brief. I'll be speaking Ukrainian, English now, but very briefly.
Careful and humble in what I say about Ukrainian resilience. I think everything that's been said by my fellow panelists is absolutely correct, and I picked up on a lot of the similar themes. We see from our research that there is still, as Pani Julia said, some kind of crisis response playing out in society. Even after 4 years of war, there is still a certain amount of rally around the flag effect. That is not permanent. And that is at the same time an advantage, but also a risk. And that's why we, on Partnership for a Resilient Ukraine, are looking at things that underpin social cohesion more broadly in Ukraine. I think in terms of the current state, there are some, what we would say in English, sort of some green shoots, some positive things to really focus on. The first, and it comes out in your study, is the trust in key parts of government. So trust in the defense sector, trust in emergency services, for example, SESU, State Emergency Service of Ukraine, remains extremely high. People feel that those services are delivering for them, and that remains a source of trust and cohesion. Much of the work that we do is with communities, among communities, and we heard already from Pan Vitaly about adaptation and how communities have adapted. And that's something we've seen a lot of in our work over the last 4 years. We did a piece of research a few years ago, which I cite endlessly, called Pillars of the Community, looking at local cultural operators, so people who work in museums, people who work in the creative sectors. Before the full-scale invasion, those people largely did that. With the onset of the full-scale invasion, those people have turned into very different roles. Often they play a role in terms of transitional justice. Often they are job creators. Often they are places for a community to come together physically. In some cases, they have shelters, or a place for a community to come together spiritually and to have discussions and to work through what has happened over the past few years. That's just one example among many of how Ukrainian communities have adapted to the current situation. And I mean, there are other examples too. When I first came to Ukraine in 2017, very few people talked about mental health concerns. Very few people talked about barrier-free, bezbariernost. These are now two themes that you hear a lot about. People are much more open about talking about them. And those are increasingly vital as we see, sadly, more and more people coming back with disabilities, more and more people living with disabilities. That presents a huge risk in terms of future social cohesion trends if people don't have access to basic services and opportunities. But those are being talked about. Communities are acting on them. Government is acting on them. So I will pause there because I know there are other questions to come. But I think there are many things which are underpinning social cohesion currently. And I look forward to talking more with panelists about what could happen in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Nathan, for your presentation. Я думаю, що ми дійсно
I think that some issues maybe we haven't covered, but we'll hear them from the audience. So there have been some questions from the audience. Colleagues from the online, please, go ahead and pose your questions to our panelists. So because we're now at our Q&A session. So while the audience is thinking, please, Yulia, go ahead. Very briefly, in terms of methodology, I didn't mention it before on purpose, but when we speak of social cohesion, it's about crisis, resilience, and adaptability or adaptivity and recovery. So, of course, there are no similar examples. We always this recovery always takes a different shape. The main thing is that this ecosystem just remains and remains recoverable, so to say. But this social cohesion is part of societal resilience. Thank you for the panel. Ilya Tkachenko from Kiev School of Economics. So what has been voiced resonates with me greatly, but I'd like to hear from you in terms of self-participation in the context of cohesion, how important it is, and in terms of collective capacity, how is it related to how can it be boosted, and how is it related to social cohesion? Let me give you a theory of normalization of groups from physics. When we look at microcosm and meso world, and when we look at the whole space, there are different laws, but when we compare these laws, these worlds, they are different. So does it really matter at which level our perspective is when regarding those worlds? So just let's take a real life example. There is a line of people standing in the line. Let's take that every person has a red shirt, t-shirt, and a black t-shirt, for example. So when I look at people, I can see that people are, well, more or less well-dressed. When I look at 100 people, so I can see this order, it's now not that evident. But when I look at a bigger perspective, I can see that the order is even less evident. The same goes for Ukrainian well, like state and society. For a general citizen, common, ordinary citizen, it's important to maintain their routine, and for generally for a Ukrainian citizen, that's what resilience is. But let's take a different perspective. When we do a zoom out during the war, so this contribution is way over there, very low. It doesn't show because there is no layer that will transform these practices so that they are institutionalized. So even during the protracted war, and when the war is longer there, when the administrations and governments are going to be directive in their actions, then this Ukrainian resilience and cohesion will not last much longer, but of course it must have to have this layer that will help institutionalize practices. Yes, civil society and civil society organizations and any kinds of activities for us are like a fresh gulp of water for us, a fresh watermelon, so to say. It's not that we are ready to comply. It's in fact, how many of them do we have? Like in our Hromada, we have 3 civil society organizations. One is works with children. They do some Montessori practices. Second one, they make they help the military, and the third one, they are close to first response activities. What they do, what they ask for is that give us a venue, please help us with power supply and so on, and we help them. For example, we used to have 2 preschools, now we have 1, and one venue was empty, and that's where we housed the School of Art. Then we offered another civil society organization. We're saying them, you're a Montessori organization, just come here, you can work here, we'll support you. You know, individual activities, level of individual activities are high. People collect donations, people contribute to some maintenance works for the cars. But when it comes about collective efforts, people turn to be afraid of responsibility. You know, and active citizens, they are everywhere. They are in all committees, steering committees. They're so much involved in governance that it's just there is. I will very soon face the situation when I will turn to them for advice more than once so often. I don't know what the situation is in other hromadas, but I'm speaking of my community. We are ready to support such organizations because we have this ties that are working. We had some branch offices from Kryvyi Rih, but those efforts, they fell flat for some reason. We supported them, but then they didn't live long. Whether they're active, yes, and they do contribute to social resilience. For example, this organization that works for kids, that they do some for kids rehabilitation and so on, and they are a shelter, so to say, for young kids. My son is 8, and he's at my side, by my side all the time. And when I ask him to go to the bakery to buy some bread, he's afraid. And this socialization and interaction is at a very low level. Children prefer to use their gadgets and to stay at home rather than interact. But this civil society organization that works for kids, it's a great initiative, and we support it. And the parents like what they do, but they are only one organization. And in Kherson, I know that have the same, more or less the same situation. We need rotations of people, so to say. We need the same as the military to have. We need we need active ambassadors from the civil society. So within the civil society, you know, it's like you use useful bacteria, you know, to fight the harmful bacteria, and that's when you use them to fight some conditions, or among the bees, for example, when the bees are left without the queen, they are aggressive. But when you have the bee queen implanted there, they bite less. So I'm sorry for such associations, but we need these bee queens. As Vitaly has been saying, vertically wise, it would be great. I don't expect, these ambassadors and civil society organizations to come en masse in frontline communities, but we need at least a little bit more activity. When there was some representative who came and said, so find the people and we will support them with money, we'll boost their capacity with equipment. But, all the active people, they are already doing something. Like we have psychologist for 2 hours, like a week, or some period of time, but they just work to implement a grant. And if more people come, we will support them in full. So, Andriy, as a representative of local government, you are offering quite specific solutions, which is great. I will add, thank you for sharing the situation in your hromada, that there are active individuals, but in other hromadas, we saw the situation that those individuals cannot really shift the situation. If you want to really make a difference, the locals, they only will listen to organized groups, so to say. Even they would listen to IDP councils, veteran councils. They could make a bigger difference than if an individual would come and offer something. So these such things are usually overlooked, such as nuances. In rare hromadas, the matter of the issue of elections was brought up very carefully, but still. And of course, we understand that it's not possible during the martial law, but still the scenario has been discussed tentatively. And we need to realize that if these tools are not activated, like in your specifics of the frontline community, but the communities are different. If these democratic participation tools are not activated, then the levels of trust will drop, and the electoral rotations, if they are not in place, then pre-election tools related to participation, especially when not in demand, they can become a catalyst of transformation. Here our cohesion in different dimensions, both vertical and horizontal, is closely related, connected to the participatory governance tools, where they should be actualized, and they are in demand. This participation in hromadas is in place in relocated hromadas. It's a completely different situation in terms of preserving ties, local identity. And there is much to be done there. And the situation differs by hromada, but there is no unified solution. There can be different models, but there is no single solution. These solutions need to be targeted by needs. So, colleagues, I'm looking at my watch, and I think that we have time for one more question maximum. Irina Ivanova, the Association for Boosting the Self-Organization of Population. Just a small remark. We have presented our research in terms of participatory tools and how they are used, and what we saw. Just to echo what Julia has been saying, everything is based on trust. And our cohesion, and what we could see from today's findings, and thank you, colleagues, for the hard work that you did. The loss of trust as a direct impact on cohesion and on the perceptions of the tools of civic participation and whether they're used. What Andrei has said, that unfortunately our coherence is at its peak only when we face a threat. But when we have to organize ourselves to sow some grass in the yard, that's where we have some issues. And of course, it's a matter of there is stigma, there is the fatigue, and it's not even about the lack of elections. It's just that many people are unaware of how long it will last. People have this fatigue, and they are waiting for the victory so that we can move towards different processes, also elections.
Let me comment. You mentioned this Ukrainian phenomenon of uniting against the enemy, and if we look at this research, our cohesion index is quite high because we feel ourselves Ukrainians. When it comes down to the reasons, well, if they are trying to kill you, you try to survive. That's why if there is an external shock, there is a huge response resisting the shock. The society is trying to preserve and survive. And our resilience, it has a defensive nature. We are defending ourselves from the external threat. But the problem is that this defensive effort doesn't help you with your daily life. In order to move on with your daily life, you need coordination between different factors. We need to believe in something else, in some principles that would coordinate us. For example, everyone goes on the left side of the street. If everyone believes that, there will be coordination. Otherwise, it will be a chaos. Or we need to have some external coordination from the government. So my point is, when it comes to advice for the future, my first recommendation is about coordination. Coordination is key. Around narratives, governments, without that, it would be hard. That's my first recommendation. And second, there is this bacteria, Deinococcus radiodurans. What is specific about this bacteria is that it withstands much more radiation as compared to humans. First, because they have excessive genome. Secondly, this bacteria is organized into compact bubbles, and when they collapse, they stay close. And thirdly, it all happens in a manganese environment, meaning that resilience, what it is about some excessive extra knowledge, resources, capacity. Secondly, you need to have a recovery map. If the school is destroyed, but we need to have the school designed to build it back. And to build back not only what we had, but also what we want to have in the future. And thirdly, we need to have quick recovery mechanisms in place. The bacteria resilience comes down not to what it has, it comes down to what it invested throughout the revolution. It invested in its capacity to build back and to bounce back. And it means that our government and our communities need to think about not only preserving the resources, but also about the capacity to bounce back, to make sure that destruction doesn't lead to degradation. Ukrainians, as people who were not always were well-to-do, we got used to protecting our assets, but we also need to think about building back. Thank you, Andriy. This is basically a final remark. Well, we've just started. Okay, but please be concise. Well, that was a great example about the bacteria. If they could hold public consultations, for example, for the school design, I think the radiation would have killed them. And bacteria, they are making decisions on their own, single-handedly. And today, as Yulia rightly said, when it comes to local initiatives, local governance, for example, today I have a destroyed school, a 3-story school. It was maintained and renovated in 2024. And it was basically half of the school was destroyed. I have the designs to build it back. But the school head master, she left for Estonia and then came back. She demands for the shelter. And it's true, we won't be able to build it back until we have the shelter. And my point is that we have 14 kilometers to the front line. We don't have enough money for one school. But this headmaster, she is pushing and uniting community around her. But we need to be cognizant of the resources we have in the community. We have limited funds that you can use throughout the fiscal year. So when it comes to the trust, it's quite nuanced thing. Do I trust in the person who wants to make decisions for myself, that they are entitled to humanitarian aid? I don't trust that person. Do I trust a person who tells me where I need to go during the air alert? Of course not. I decide it myself. So all these stories around trust, there is a lot of manipulation around them. And I'm sure that in the future, the future story of the frontline areas will be about that. Where did you stay during the war, during the recovery? And the ambassadors with specific authority and specific contributions that they made, it would be great if they could have invest their energy in the frontline regions, because we are under a lot of pressure to not only destroy us, they are also putting a lot of pressure in terms of Russian propaganda about Russian world, about destructive things, about something non-Ukrainian, including about the bad Ukrainian government. And if you ask people in the village, if you ask residents in the village about the Ukrainian government, you will hear a lot of a long list of accusations. So this connectedness between the local government, ambassadors, civil society, when they work not to utilize the grant funds, but when they focus on future development. We discussed the community development strategy with Alexander, And in a frontline region, when you are 6 kilometers away from the front line, which may change in the future, the strategy there, it should be different from Lviv or Kropivnitsky, because it's hard for me to think about the solid waste side, because I'm obliged to think about that, and the government is going to inspect what I have done in that regard. I mean, I am all for sorting the waste for environment, but there should be a priority. So, in terms of mistrust, for this triangle of government, people, and assets is very important for the social cohesion. And the assets can be different, and people can be different. They can be local or from other communities. So I invite everyone to our community. Thank you. We will hold you up for on this word. And last comment to Volodymyr. Yeah, I would like to think that was a great presentation and great panel. If you had been a consultant or advisor, could you give 1, 2, 3 examples of what do we need to lobby for from the local government perspective to boost the local cohesion? Is it targeted at one of the panelists or all? Okay, all. Okay, let's do it. Let me start. Well, when it comes to cohesion, I would think about local elections.
The government cannot and should not do everything, especially when the needs are so high. I think the question asked by KSC colleague here was extremely pertinent. Government should work with civil society, create a framework in which civil society can come together and solve key societal issues, particularly for questions like veterans and youth. Thanks.
Well, it's up to you. First, clear guidance on what to do, because Ukrainians are freedom lovers. They can go wherever they want. Secondly, we need to have clear understanding and clear support for the civil society, because one thing, when you can come to us because you are obliged to under the grant agreement, and second thing is when you come to us and make sure that it really works. Thank you, Valdemar, for this question. We need to focus on the community needs. Secondly, it's security and safety around of different infrastructure facilities. And when it comes to participation and democracy, there should be some transparency in decision making to make sure that the social tension is alleviated. And by the way, what I would like to add is that there is quite a popular trend. It's a barrier-free environment, and it should not only be physical. I mean, it should be, we need to have this barrier-free environment in different dimensions, and that's what people are saying, in the emotional dimension and others. And I mean, people tend to think about physical things, but we should not forget other dimensions. Specifically in the healthcare sector, we need to have clear protocols in place. Thank you, Yulia. Vitaly, anything to add? Yeah, just wanted to add what's important to me. We have super active grassroots activities, and the government that is not held accountable. And my suggestion is that we do local elections where it's possible. For example, in Lviv, it's quite possible to do local elections in Lviv or some other place. And if we don't want to do that, we need to look for other ways to get the coordination between the between the government and the grassroots. Yeah, as a response to the erosion of trust that we are observing. Dear colleagues, given the time, this is 1 o'clock sharp. That's why I would like to thank our panelists, our speakers. Let's give them a round of applause. And I also would like to thank the organizers of this event. I would want to thank the participants and the interpreters for their support. I think the key message of this event is that the Ukrainian society preserves a strong margin of resilience and social cohesion, as we have seen in comparison with other countries. Ukraine, despite the challenging times, the protracted war of the fifth year of protracted war, we have to understand this. We should not see it as something granted to us. And this survey breaks down and gives us insights into things that underpin our social cohesion. And we can clearly see the gaps and vulnerabilities that we need to focus on as different actors, including the Partnership Fund for Resilient Ukraine, to make sure that we maintain this cohesion, because we don't know how long we need to hold on. Thank you, and I invite everyone to the informal part of our event, catering and networking.